In this update, we're going to be tracking a new storm system that's going to really start to intensify as we head into midweek and then really start to get its act together as we go into the weekend, impacting the East Coast. So let's take a look at the setup going forward. And we've got a pretty significant trough that's highlighted over the East Coast now, but that will be moving out into the Atlantic. And that's going to be replaced by this ridge of high pressure that's really locked over the west right now. In fact, Phoenix is going to hit 103 degrees today. A lot of that heat will be slowly shifting eastbound as we get deeper into the week. And then we have to turn our attention to this little subtle piece of energy up here towards Alaska. That is the piece of energy that's going to be diving southeast and really start to get its act together across portions of the Great Lakes, and then the same system will be moving into the southeast and eventually heading up the East Coast as we go into the weekend. So let's take a look at the temperatures this morning, because it's pretty chilly, folks. It feels a lot like fall out there as that initial blast of cold air. All those areas in blue, those are widespread freezing conditions for much of the middle part of the country. In fact, the coldest temperatures you've actually seen since April timeframe. So it's definitely a welcome sight to feel some of this fall-like air for a good part of the country this morning. So if we take a look at the overall satellite picture, there's several things that stand out. First, we've got this storm system out here across the eastern Pacific, and then yet we have another storm system that's going to be trailing behind that one across the eastern Pacific. Notice how clear it is across a good part of the United States. Really, the only instability is going to be across the Pacific Northwest, and that's the interior regions. We're talking places like Seattle and Portland. Those areas in Northern California have some instability and light to moderate rain showers impacting them, but we are going to be keeping an eye on those storm systems across the East Coast. In fact, the National Hurricane Center has highlighted both of those of a higher probability of actually becoming a storm. So as these become a storm, I don't think they'll be impacting the US this week, but they will start to play a role as we go into next week for the United States. So let's take a look at the setup for tomorrow. So there's that ridge of high pressure that we talked about. All that heat that's going to be locked over the West Coast will slowly start migrating eastbound, replacing those cooler fall-like temperatures to more unseasonable-like temperatures and above average temperatures, while much of the east and much of Florida is still raking in the colder air. But that little bit of a colder air will slowly be shifting eastbound as we get deeper into the week. But one thing's for certain, right now, it's pretty severe clear out there, folks. It's feeling a lot like fall, and it's going to be a lot of sunny skies for the next several days for really a good part of the country. All this area in brown here, that's dry air, folks, and that's really locked over a good part of the US. But we got to turn our attention to the Northwest, because that instability that's draped across Alaska right now will be starting to get its act together as it dives southeastbound and really starting to tighten up as we get into the middle of the week. This is Wednesday time frame on the vorticity map. You can see that area of a little bit of a low pressure starting to form up there into the Dakotas, and underneath that we are going to be seeing some kind of elevated rain showers across a good part of north and southern portion, South Dakota here, especially in Minnesota, into Wisconsin, getting into Iowa. You can see the rest of the country is pretty clear while we're still, as that storm still is developing off into the eastern Pacific, and likely will be kind of a named storm by the time we head into the middle of the week. But on the surface map, here's the setup on Thursday. And it's a cold front, but there you can see there's no cold air trailing behind this front. It's more of a wind shift, and it's a dry front for a good part of the country. The only game in town will be this fall storm that we're going to be tracking all week long. So by the time we head into Thursday, it's likely going to be highlighted over across a good part of Wisconsin into Illinois. And this will start to get its act together as we'll be watching this eastern Pacific storm also looking to get its act together as well. here it is for on the pressure map. You can kind of see where the low pressure is. About 1,004 millibar low pressure will be moving across the Great Lakes into Michigan by then, back into Indiana. And this will actually be diving southbound and really start to deepen as it taps into some of that warmer Gulf moisture. So on the overall jet stream, you can see this kind of massive dip as it dips, and you kind of have like a little bit of a buckle in the jet stream. The further it digs, the more instability it's going to be, going to create, and the higher winds is going to be able to create as well. So as we get into that Friday afternoon time frame, we've got that some of that instability. It's going to be tapping into some of those warmer sea surface anomalies still left into the Gulf of Mexico. So we've got some still warmer pockets of energy down here into the Gulf of Mexico that's going to be able to tap into this abundant kind of moisture supply down here, and that's going to play a role as we head into the weekend. So again, the further it's able to dig, the more energy it's going to be able to produce down here into the southeast. And we'll be watching again. There's that storm system just kind of lurking all week long. I don't really think it goes anywhere. It's not really a major player until I think we head into early part of next week. But all eyes will be on this fall storm as it really starts to likely intensify starting into your Saturday time frame. And when it does, that's going to be heading up the East Coast again. So for you guys in the East, it's kind of been some of a nuisance here lately of these storm systems that have been impacting the same areas over and over and over again, especially on the weekends. And this is another storm system that will unfortunately impact the East Coast into the weekend. So another significant storm that looks to play a role and cause a lot of disruption in your travels, and higher wind gusts across these regions, and more heavy rain looks to unfold across portions of Ohio, into Indiana, back into New Jersey again, into New York City, into Massachusetts, into Connecticut, back into Vermont and New Hampshire, but especially into Maine, as the tight isobars will really starting to tighten up, and this low will be digging and deepening down to a 986 millibar low pressure, likely by the time we head into Saturday evening. And the probability of it dipping even further than that, the probability below 990 is pretty high. It's over 60-70%. So this low pressure center could be a fairly big player as we head into the weekend again for the Northeast. And underneath that, we've got some higher winds that are going to be impacting, and the latest update could drop it even down to a 970 millibar low pressure. So we've got some pretty significant isobars. That's also indicating some very high, maybe even some intense winds draped across these regions of Maine, back into Vermont, New Hampshire, maybe even a good part of Rhode Island might get in the action, into Long Island, back into Massachusetts and Connecticut, as these same areas just look to get impacted yet again, going into the weekend. And there's that ridge will slowly migrate from west to east pretty much all week long. So a good part of the West and much of the central US will start to be well above average, as some of these temperatures will actually approach the 90-degree mark back here in a good part of Texas. I wouldn't be surprised if some 90s, even some maybe record temperatures into South Texas could unfold with mid 90s as we go into that Saturday and Sunday time frame, as all the instability will be really kind of highlighted across a good part of the Ohio, Southeast, Mid-Atlantic, and especially into the Northeast going into this weekend. And there it is on the rainfall map. You miss out on a lot of activity because there's just no lift out west. So you're asking, hey, where's El Nino? There's just no lift whatsoever out west. So it's pretty severe clear across a good part of California, Nevada, and much of the Four Corners regions, much of Nebraska into Kansas and Oklahoma and Texas. You can barely buy a drop across those regions. And this is over the next 7 days, folks. So likely the storm system impacts the West Coast mainly the Pacific Northwest and mainly the coastal regions. And then we'll be watching that storm system move through the Dakotas, really start to wind up as we go through the Great Lakes, diving southbound. Likely some heavier rains start to unfold across a good part of Tennessee, into Kentucky, back into West Virginia, and then it taps into that energy back into the Gulf as well as into the Atlantic, and then really gets its act together as it heads up the East Coast going into this weekend. So places like New Jersey again, into Long Island, into New York City, back into Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and Connecticut, Nantucket region, especially back into Maine. These areas likely will see probably 1 to 3 inches of additional rain showers. But look off the map. This is that Eastern Pacific storm that will start to become a player as I think we head into the first couple of days of next week, because finally out west we've got the lift mechanism. You got to have some sort of lift, and I think finally we have some rain showers in the cards for portions of the South, as this trough will be diving into the desert Southwest. That will be able to tap into the subtropical jet stream further south and tap into some of that energy down there in the Eastern Pacific, and that will be able to shear across and spread some of those potentially some welcome rains into Texas. So if we're looking on the precipitable water map, going into that Tuesday, Wednesday timeframe, this is next week. Of course, this is a long ways out. This is 7 to 10 days out. But it does, in fact, you stay dry on that area for the next 7 days, but changes could be on the table. Compliments of that trough coming in out west and that Eastern Pacific storm that's going to be lurking out there all week, finally going to be lifting north enough that's going to be caught in that subtropical jet stream and then spread some of the welcome rains back into the southern plains, into parts of Texas, into Oklahoma, portions of Arkansas by then. But that won't be until the middle of next week. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video and definitely check out my winter forecast after this update, and catch me in the next update where I protect you before and after the storm.